Hello everybody, Bengala Tunji here. Today we'll be looking at test of controls. Test of controls. What is control itself? We shall be looking at it. And under the test of control topic, we will be looking at computer assisted audit techniques. Don't forget we are in the era of IT. Yes. Interconnectivity has come to take its hold on the world. So computer must assist us to do audit. So that is what we mean by computer assisted audit techniques. We'll be looking at transaction cycles or transaction cycle. We'll be looking at test of controls and the steps that are involved. Tests of controls and the steps that are involved, like risks, controls, objectives, controls itself, test of controls. Let's go into the slide now by way of introducing ourselves. When we are talking about test of control, we are talking about control. And when we are talking about control, please, for the purpose of audit, let system come to your mind. Let systems come to your mind when you see control. So the auditor assures himself that the control environment is effective by carrying out test of controls. So why auditor tests is because we want to assure ourselves that control environment is effective. So therefore we ask ourselves, what is control environment? What is control environment? Simply put, control environment is the generality of the attitude of the employees, the employers, the management towards control put in place. Let me come slowly. Control environment can be defined as the general total attitude of management and everyone in an organization towards controls put in place. Okay? Planning test of controls. We must plan in order to have effective and efficient results in anything we are doing. And just as you know, planning is a big chunk when it comes to the syllabus of audit. Planning is a big chunk. So we will go into how to plan around testing the internal control system. The auditor focuses on testing the systems and the internal controls that produce the financials. So what is systems, or what are systems? Systems, simply put, are combinations of isolated or stand-alone processes. But when they come together as one, they form a system. Let's take, for example, a vehicle. A vehicle is a unit, is an item. But we all know that it has a lot of components. So a stand-alone component is a control or is a process. But when they come together, they become systems of control or system of a car. I hope we understand. So a system is combination of different processes, different items, different controls put together to form and work as a unit, as a singular environment, as a singular organization. Okay, so we said that auditor focuses on tests of the internal control to, produce the report rather than figures themselves. So what do we mean by this? If we focus on what produce something, the product will take care of itself. What do I mean? Our financial statement is the combination of the transaction that has happened, maybe within a quarter, within a year, biannual and the like. But it passes through a lot of processes, a lot of departments, a lot of units contribute to a financial statement. So you will pay more attention to all those processes, internal controls that generate that particular financial. Financial will take care of itself. So we cannot play down on the internal control systems that were put in place by an organization. Two conditions are necessary before the auditor can adopt a system-based audit approach. Okay, so different types of audit approaches, but this particular one relates to our topic because we are talking about control. And I told you earlier that when we are talking about controls, we should not forget it simply means systems. So when we are talking about system-based audit approach, we are talking about audit approach that is based on internal processes. Okay, what are the two conditions that must be in place? Simply put, the system of control must be in place, first of all, and it's not good enough that it's in place. The system of control must be working effectively. The system of control must be working effectively. Okay, I want to believe that this is a video you are going to learn a lot from. Don't forget to like us, subscribe to us. GJAMES Associates, we are value to your life, we are value to your business. Let's move on in the slide. Systems of controls. System of control. The systems and the controls in place should be designed to minimize the risks of misstatements. Let's stop there. The systems and controls in place must be designed. So who designed, whose responsibility it is to design internal control system? Please know that it is the management's responsibility. It is the management responsibility, I repeat again, to design internal control systems. It is not the work of an auditor to do, even though they can advise, but primarily it is the responsibility of the managers, the management put in place to ensure systems of controls are in place. Okay, the auditor carries out these checks of controls in his procedures for the documentation and evaluation of controls. So when we are testing controls, we must document it. I always say that anything a professional is doing must be written down. We must ensure we write down what we are doing and our evaluation reports of the control system that we are observing. The system and controls should actually operate effectively Just as I've said before, it is important that the system exists and also it must be working effectively. And if we observe any weakness in it, we must report it. We must ensure that we strengthen and propose how the organization can strengthen it. So we are going deeper into the topic, computer assisted audit techniques. It is important for us to know that before this era, audit has always been done. But now we are in computer age and computer has come to stay and to help us. It has its advantages that is bringing to the table. So we cannot overlook computer in helping in audit works. So computer assisted audit techniques. Where systems are IT based, specialized techniques of obtaining audit evidence may be required. That is true. Don't forget that a lot happen in a computer system that we could not see, and it takes other application, other written programs to communicate and interact with that particular system. Unlike when we are doing hard copy audits, when we vouch on our papers and the like, we interact physically with the document. But now we are interacting and we are talking about audit interaction with the computer and within the computer. So these are known as computer assisted audit techniques. We usually call it CATs, computer assisted audit techniques. It can be defined as any techniques that enables the auditor to use its IT system as a source of generating audit evidence. So when we use system-based audit approach, when our computer, our laptop, our programs and like help us in achieving audit evidence, we are working using computer assisted audit technique. Cards are often necessary in the audits of IT system because this system may not provide an adequate audit trail. So what is an audit trail? Audit trail simply means we should be able to see and follow a footprint from the beginning to the end. So how are we going to follow a footprint that we could not see? Because everything has been computerized. So therefore we need to use computer to trace computer's parts. Simple. Okay. In addition, processing is invincible, just as we know we could not see it. Therefore, the auditor needs to get inside the computer. So when we get inside the computer, we are talking about CAT. So types of CATs now. Basically, we have two. And for the purpose of this lecture and exam syllabus, we'll focus on one. So basically, the two are audit softwares and test data. I repeat, audit software and test data. So when we are talking about audit software, basically we are talking about audit programs that auditor use in generating audit evidence and aid his or her work. So audit software are applications, programs used to generate audit evidence, and there are a lot of them. And because we are not on the field, I want to believe that is one of the reasons Ican did not major on audit software in our syllabus. But test data is a major part of this talk and the syllabus. So let's talk about test data. Test data, simply put, is extraction of information or extraction of data from client's application for audit purposes. Let me come again slowly. Let's say your organization uses Sage to prepare its accounts. Test data is the extraction that auditor had made within your Sage application to ensure that the Sage application is working properly. So that is test data. The technique provides evidence of the operation of specific application control in a given system. Okay? Audit software is more relevant to substantive testing and is therefore considered in a later chapter. So, for this purpose, we major on test data. Okay? The use of test data involves the auditor processing a sample of data through the IT system, just as I said. One way of achieving this without corrupting the client's data file with the test data is to establish an extra domain department. So let me break that one down. What we are simply saying is, you know, your application that you use for your operations in the office, we call them live data. Just like in electrical engineering, they talk about live wire. So all those information that you have within your computer system and applications, they are live data, and we don't touch, no one touches live wire or live data. So we don't touch live data so that they will not be corrupted and distorted, and the whole operation of organization will go haywire. So because it is not professional to touch live data, and auditor must assure himself that the internal control system, even within the application, is working perfectly, we need to extract and create a dummy account. A dummy account. In IT world, we call it control environment, or test environment rather. We call it test environment. So in our syllabus, it's called dummy department. So we create a test environment in which we test the data so that we will not tamper with what is really happening and the real life data. A potential problem with using test data is that it will only give audit evidence at the time that the data is tested. Okay, we are going to go into much detail about the disadvantages and the advantages of the test data. But it is important for us to notice that when we extract, in IT what we call it spooling, when we spool out information It must be at a particular time. You will agree with me? And when we go back, the tendency is there that the information could have changed on the life scenario. So this is a major disadvantage using test data. Other disadvantages: Caat is expensive, you will agree. Computer, setting up computer audits or any computer work at the initial stage are usually expensive, especially comparatively when we compare it to the analog or the physical paper audits. So it's more expensive in getting the application, the software, even the training of the auditor to use it is expensive in a lot of ways. Okay, let's move on. Having said that, test data could be expensive at initial stage. It has its own benefit too before we consider transaction cycle. Its tests or Caat speed up audit process, is more efficient, it's more reliable because less of physical errors that woman can make and the like. Let's move on please. Transaction cycle. So simply put, when we are talking about transaction cycle, we are talking about the chain of activities within an organization. En block, we are talking about different activity from its beginning to the end and how it contributes to the generation of another activity from its beginning to the end, and putting them together to form a unit of an organization operations. So transaction cycle, basically they are chain of business activity within an organization which result into product development or rendering of our services. Of course, resources are exchanged in form of receiving it or giving it out, maybe by from one department to the other, or even from us as an organization, as a product or service to our client or customer. Okay, please, if you've not subscribed, this is important to us. Please, if you've been enjoying the video, subscribe to us, like us. Okay, so still on transaction cycles. Some of the major transaction cycle that an organization will have are sales, purchases, payroll, yes, payroll, bank too, inventory. These are transaction cycles. Revenue, mhm, and many more. These are transaction cycles. And all of them have a way of contributing to the products or rendering of our services. Test of control should therefore be seen within this context. Finally, in our exams, for the purpose of our exams, we could be asked and given a scenario, especially in our number one question, compulsory question, to test a scenario. So when you are given that kind of question, please, please follow these four basic steps. Please follow these 4 basic steps. When you have to test control, let primarily risk to come to your mind. Risk in that scenario created or in that organization that the question carries, let it come to your mind. After the risk, we will talk about control objectives. Then we'll talk about controls. Then you can test the controls. So let's pick them one by one. Step 1, risk. Number 1, risk. So when we are talking about risk, we are simply considering what could go wrong or what has gone wrong in the systems of control. Let's take for example, we are looking at purchases. In a purchase environment, what could go wrong? Order may not be placed. Order could be placed, but supply wrongly in form of quality, in form of quantity. So all these are risks and many more. So when we are given a scenario, ensure you spend as much as possible time to itemize your risk and risks observed in that question. I guarantee you one thing, if you spend 75% of your time identifying the risks in that question, you've not wasted time, because immediately you are able to, everything is sorted out. The other 3 steps are sorted out. So take your time, please, to itemize the risks in that particular scenario or in that particular environment and organization. Having said that, the next step is to consider control objectives. So what is control objectives? Simply put, control objectives are ideal situation, what the organization will have looked at like if there's no risk. So control objective is the ideal situation, what we want the organization or the process or the procedure to be or will have been if all things being equal. That is control objective. And let me give you a simple way to know your control objective. Don't forget, if you spend 75% of your time on that particular question, itemizing your risk, you are sorted. So your control objective simply is the reversal of that risk that you've itemized. Yes, when you reverse that risk you've itemized, you get your control objective. So we move on to controls. So controls are what or the mechanism that must be in place to achieve our control objective and also to address risk involved in that process. So you need to put or propose some controls, level of mitigation in place and in that question to achieve that control objective, that is the ideal situation, and also to minimize the risk you've already identified. And immediately you've done that, you're almost through. You test the control. And test of control simply is to know primarily whether the control is in existence, and if it's in existence, whether it's working effectively, and if not, if it's not working effectively, you propose how to strengthen it. So we are from GJAMES Associates. Like us, subscribe to us. We are value to life. We are value to your business.